Dead Man on Campus, a movie from '98 starring Tom Everett Scott and Mark Paul Gosselaar. It was one of those like MTV Productions movies, and definitely a very controversial movie, even for its time, because it is about unaliving, and it is a dark comedy. I don't know what it is with dark comedies in me, but I actually, even though it has very strong themes, I loved this movie just because of Tom Everett Scott and Mark Paul Gosselaar's like dynamic together. It was just hilarious throughout. Okay, so like the summary of this movie is two roommates, Josh and Cooper, played by Tom Everett Scott and Mark Paul Gosselaar, when their grades start to slip, they find kind of a loophole into the school's charter that allows a student to get straight A's if their roommate unalives themselves. Okay, so the beginning of the movie shows Tom Everett Scott, Josh. He's enrolling in all his courses, and I think he's studying medicine. So it shows him in all his classes, and they're like very challenging classes too. And then he goes to his dorm, and that's where the very first person he meets is Kyle, played by Jason Segel, and he's like a very aggressive like alpha male, and he's just like, singles mine, and he slams the door. And so then he goes into the doubles room, and later on he meets Cooper, played by Mark Paul Gosselaar, who's actually the opposite of him. He's like a stoner type. The first thing he does in the dorm is like invite a whole bunch of people over to party, and Josh is just kind of like, oh, I guess this is happening. And then he does find someone there. Someone catches his eye, a girl named Rachel. So he's kind of like, all right, well, I guess I'll let the party happen. But he doesn't know her name yet. Jason Segel, Kyle, goes up to him. He's like, that's Rachel. And he's just like, oh, how do you know? And he's just like, oh, the freshman Facebook. I've been jerking off to that thing for weeks. And he was just like, oh. And so he goes over and meets Rachel, and he has a good conversation with her. Meanwhile, Kyle meets a girl there, played by Linda Cardellini, and they were both in the show Freaks together. And he really hits it off with her because she's like a Catholic girl, and so I thought that was funny. So anyway, Josh starts to kind of party a little too hard with like his newfound girlfriend and Cooper, and it just shows him kind of struggling throughout his classes, and he's just partying way too hard, and eventually like midterms come and his grades start to slip. And so the counselor tells him at the beginning, like, hey, you just need to make sure you like keep a B+ average. But what she didn't tell him, what she finds out, or when she tells him later, is that he needed to keep those grades to keep his scholarship, because he's there for a full scholarship. And so, yeah, it gets to a point where, he hasn't been paying attention in class, and so now his scholarship is on the line. And so she told him, was like, well, I mean, I'm sure you still did well on your midterms. Well, it turns out he didn't. He like got F's on everything. And Cooper's situation, he actually hadn't been in class for like 2 months, and then his dad finds out, like visits the school, and he like threatens to kick him out if he doesn't like get on the ball and start going to class and getting good grades. I forgot to add that Kyle actually told them that he's going to stay with like the Catholic girl for a while, but don't mess with his stuff. Back to Josh. He tells Cooper he has to stay on track to keep his scholarship, and he can't be messing around anymore. Later, they're shown at a bar just kind of discussing like their slipping grades, and then the bartender catches wind, and he's like, hey, there's a guy that went to that school and he has something to tell y'all. So they like meet up with this random dude at the bar that tells them like, oh yeah, I had a roommate that like ended up unaliving himself, and I got good like straight A's all through because I was really going through something, and it's actually stated it's like a clause in their charter. And so Josh and Cooper are a little skeptical at first. They were like, really, is that true? So later on that night, they end up going to the library, and they see the charter, and sure enough, it actually does say it in there. So that's when like wheels are in motion. And so Cooper suggests like, hey, you know what, while Kyle's gone, we could like get a roommate who's like has mental health issues or really depressed. So like, let's go, go to the students' files and see who's like the most troubled student. So the next scene is so hilarious because it shows them all decked out in black with like ropes and stuff because they're going to like the office at the university because they're gonna break in and like steal all like the students' files. And it's just funny the way they're just like Mission Impossible style, but they're like really bad at it. And eventually, like they're caught by security whenever Cooper is in there trying to get files, but like they're able to run away with them successfully. So Cooper ends up finding a guy named Cliff O'Malley, played by Lachlan Monroe, and they go over to his frat building, and immediately they see him. He's like hanging off of a balcony, throwing stuff at like the people walking, and he's just crazy and not like, not a care in the world about his well-being, and he's just yelling and all this stuff. And so they go to visit his room and basically have a conversation with him, and he tells them that he's getting kicked out of his frat room. And so they were like, well, hey, do you want to be our roommate? And so Cliff takes him up on their offer, but at first he's just like, well, hey, you know what? I want to party. So like, you want to come with me and party?
Quit, man. Kick me in the junk. Come on, man, kick me in the junk. God damn, that's a rush. Oh. My name is Cliff, brother of Joe. I got me some crack. I want me some hoes. Let me hear you say yeah. Yeah. Let me hear you say yeah.
Yeah.
Let me hear you say yeah.
I just remembered I gotta be somewhere.
Sit down, Josh.
So the first place that Coop and Josh take him is to see like his girlfriend with her two roommates. And one of the roommates is Allison Hannigan. And so they're like smoking out of a bong. And so Cliff offers to like light the bong for Allison Hannigan, but her hair like gets in front of her, and he like lights her hair on fire. And then he's just like throwing pillows at her and just going crazy into like their room. The girls are screaming, and Coop and Josh are just like, oh God, this isn't working out. Cliff is driving recklessly, like just in and out of the lanes, playing chicken with other cars, and then Coop and Josh are like scared. They're like, they don't know what he's gonna do next. And so, eventually they end up in a freaking like cop chase, and there's cops chasing him. And so they end up like rolling out of the car because it's like, this guy's just too crazy for us. So since Cliff didn't work out, Josh suggested another guy named Buckley. Now, what's going on with this guy is that he is super paranoid. He thinks Bill Gates is trying to steal his brain. He thinks that there's, he's kind of all over the map, but he's like super paranoid and schizo or whatever you want to call him. But like later on, because after they like move his stuff into their room and he's like their roommate now, Josh tells him like, hey, if you're ever feeling down, I call this hotline, and it's like the suicide hotline. And so Buckley actually does, he calls it, and Cooper actually works at this hotline station, so he ends up picking it up. And then Buckley's telling him all of his concerns, and then Cooper's just like, you should be scared because this is Bill Gates, and totally freaks him out. Eventually, Buckley gets really like suspicious of Coop and Josh because they're just always there and near him, and then he ends up finding stuff in their room, and now he thinks that they are trying to kill him, which of course they were trying to, but like, now he's telling everybody like, watch out for them, they're dangerous, I was right, and he runs off, and then you don't really see him again. But they have a third choice up their sleeve, and this guy is Matt, a very depressed British musician, and like, they think that he's just the perfect choice because he's just down, he's just always negative, like, telling everybody to piss off. And even at one point during like a music session, he's just like, oh, this music's crap, this is awful, and blah blah, just being the typical like depressed rock star, you know, and so Cooper's just actually getting excited about it because he's like, oh, we made a good choice this time. But late one night, Cooper is awakened by like some laughter, and he was like, who is that? And so he ends up like sneaking over and hearing the door behind where Matt supposedly is. And he like, looks in the key, the keyhole or whatever, and Matt like opens the door and he's like, what are you doing here? And Cooper's just like, were you just laughing? And he was just like, oh yeah, I'm a real laugher. Piss off. Now Cooper's concerned. He wakes up Josh and he's like, hey, I'm like really concerned about Matt. I don't think he's as depressed as he leads on. But then Matt knocks on their door and like, sits down with them and he's just like, I keep having these reoccurring dreams where I'm performing at on stage, and then afterwards I like unalive myself, and I've been thinking about that a lot, and so like that kind of tells Cooper and Josh like, oh, is he trying to like hint at something? Well, the next scene they are in fact performing at like a frat party or something, and so after he performs his song about sperm, by the way, he goes into the bathroom. And then what you think is going to happen doesn't. He ends up like singing this show tune instead, and then he's interrupted by Cooper, and Cooper's just like, "Were you just singing a show tune?" And he was like, no, like totally denying it. And then he finds out that he's not even British because his accent goes away when they're trying to like fight, and then Cooper's like, he's like, oh my god, you're a fucking poser, and then he like walks off.
Suicide hotline.
Hi, I think I'm having a panic attack. What seems to be the problem? You see, it's hard to explain, but I'm very frightened. You should be. Who is this? It's me, Buckley. Bill. Yeah, Bill Gates. No, what do you want from me? Your brain, Buckley. Your brain. Well, you'll have to come and get it.
So then it just comes down to like none of the choices that they made were good choices. So they go back to the dorms, and they actually run into, there was like this kid Pickles who like lives across from them, and like it just shows them kind of like every now and then. You don't really see a lot about him, but he's there. And they go into his room and ask like, hey, can we have like some margaritas? And Pickles is actually laying on his bed like lethargic, just kind of like, oh yeah, and so then they come to realize, like, they find like this note like that Pickles left, and it's like a suicide note. And they were like, oh my god, I had no idea that like he felt this way, because they really weren't paying attention to him like throughout the whole movie. And Cooper, like, the first thought on his mind's like, oh my god, let's move his stuff to our dorm, like he's gonna be our roommate. And of course Josh is like, this is insane, I can't allow this. So like he ends up saving Pickles, and just in time. And so then at that time, like Cooper and Josh are just finally fighting, because it's like, we can't give up. We got to think of a way to like get straight A's, or we're both screwed. And eventually, like Cooper's just like, like, you don't know what it's like if I go back to doing what I'm doing. And so Josh is contemplating later just about a bunch of stuff. Thing it shows Cooper, he's having a drink at like a party or a bar or something, and people are like heard like saying like, oh my god, there's a guy at the bridge, I think it's Josh. And so Cooper's like, oh my god, Josh. And like there's cops, there's students, everybody's there, they gather around where this bridge is, and sure enough, Josh is standing there, and he's just basically telling everybody like, I got nothing else to live for, I'm doing terrible at school, and like this is my only way out. And so Cooper like talks him down, and ends up saving him. And so like once Josh comes back down, they're hugging each other, and he's like, oh my god, and Josh is just like, do you think they fell for it? And so Cooper just realized what Josh was doing. Like he was never going to jump, but he wanted everyone to think he was, so that he is the roommate who's troubled. And so that plan ends up working, and eventually they're afforded like straight A's. Or actually Josh, what happens to him is he has to see a psychologist, of course, and but it did make him realize that he didn't want to go into medicine. He actually wanted to go into psychology. So, you know, it ends up benefiting both of them. And then the end of the movie just basically like summarizes what happened to everybody, what happened to like Buckley and Cliff and Matt and everybody. Just kind of, you know, wraps it all up real quick. And this movie was just crazy, and a lot of people don't talk about it, but I like it, even though it's, you know, it could not be done today. But yeah, it was a good performances by Tom Everett Scott and Mark Paul Gosselaar. This was kind of like, you know, like right after his Saved by the Bell days, so it was a very different role, and it was just crazy at the time to see him in a role like that, like being a stoner college dude. But anyway, I highly recommend it if you could find it anywhere. I don't know if it's streaming anywhere, but anyway, it was a great movie. So if anybody has ever seen this movie, did I forget anything? What are your thoughts on it? Leave a comment below. I would love to hear from you.
What good is sitting alone in your room? Come hear the music play. Life is a cabaret. Oh, fuck me. What were you just doing? What? Nothing? No. Don't tell me nothing. You were just singing a show tune. You're crazy. I'd never do that. You can't be suicidal if you're singing show tunes. What? I am suicidal. No. You're not even depressed. Of course I'm depressed. Look at me. I'm very fucking depressed. You fucking poser! Hey man, I am not a fucking you're not even British.